Before we start, I just want to thank MintyMithos for creating these little tiny guys that are really good at expressing a lot of different emotions that I'm going to be using throughout the majority of this video and more than likely all my future videos. So thank you again, MintyMithos. Go check them out. I have a link down to their Twitter and their Twitch down in the description below. There are a lot of champions in League of Legends that fit the category of forgotten champions. Those champions that don't receive balance changes that often or don't receive skins for a long time and have such a low play rate that it's almost exclusively made up by one-tricks, so much so that you sometimes forget that the champion exists. A few characters exist like that for myself. Before his rework, Volibear was a huge one. I literally forgot he was in the game sometimes. Lysandra, Yorick, Trundle, Corki, they all kind of fit the bill for champions like this. But among the forgotten champions, there stands a king among them. One champion that is so forgettable that all stats point to him being the #1 champion that people just don't play. Skarner is a lot of things. He's purple, he's big, he's made of crystals, and he's a scorpion. But most of all, he is forgettable. Riot recently showed in one of their latest blog posts that Skarner has the lowest player retention in the entire game, meaning that people that give him a chance and play him rarely keep playing him for very long. And this sucks for a lot of reasons, as he's generally such a blast to play as most of the time. Part of Skarner's big problem is that big lack of cohesion within his kit as to what he is supposed to be, and a neutral mechanic which can make him feel like he's not even champion if he isn't in a specific area of the map or his team doesn't want to help. With most other neutral objectives like Gangplank's barrels, Alawi's tentacles, or even Kindred's marks, it's on the champion themselves to be smart about using them against the specific person they're fighting, but they also all have some way to increase the odds being in their favor. Skarner, however, just has to hope and pray that his team helps him with it, as it's an objective that can be captured by anyone, and pray that he's in a specific spot of the map or he becomes a wee little baby Skarner, unable to thrive in the rift. So sad. There's many other reasons that Skarner ends up being in this weird spot where people don't want to play him, and it's a big reason why Riot is reworking him and why they're having such a struggle reworking him. This is possibly the biggest rework they've done, as they're keeping only one ability from his old kit and everything else is being done from the ground up. And unlike Aatrox, they're not keeping his current looks whatsoever, and it's necessary due to his current kit just being so lackluster and his current thematic being so mediocre. The thing is that not everything about why Skarner is forgettable is just due to his abilities being lackluster and not fun to play with, but also due to the fact that he's just not very visually interesting to look at. He just doesn't have any drip. You think about champions in the league, and even when it comes to the newer monster champions, they have very distinct ideas that go with their design. You can summarize most monster champions and most other champions with very distinct words that not only make them clearly a fantasy character, but also make them distinct from other types of fantasy characters and other characters in League of Legends. However, when you look at Skarner, there's only really two words that come to mind for newer players, and one of them really isn't that good of a descriptor for any champion, as it's just a color. Those two words just kind of have to be purple and scorpion. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot of fantasy to fulfill there. The blockiness of the crystals really just makes him look older and looks like he's from Minecraft rather than making him look like he's made of crystals. Ornn has Blacksmith, Ram, God, Chunky, Dadbod even. Belveth has Elegant, Manta Ray, Eldritch Horror. Skarner is just purple and scorpion. I realize at this point, it sounds like I'm just dogging on Skarner, and he really doesn't deserve it. This man's lore is so sad that me doing this probably doesn't even make him sad anymore. Just disappointed. Because just like most League of Legends players, Skarner himself is a bastard. Which is why the rework for Skarner has me so excited for the character, as it's a complete revival of the character to not only modernize him, but actually give him a true fantasy to his design that matches his gameplay and gives his gameplay cohesion and makes it so he always feels like a champion. Anyways, this cold open has gone on long enough, and his abilities don't take that long to understand, so look at this dude and laugh. And join me as I explain the lack of appeal for this champion and the honest truth about Skarner, the Crystal Vanguard. Skarner! Prepare to cry. Long ago, before even the Empire of Shurima existed, there was an ancient race known as the Brackern living in the northwest valleys of the region. While they were not technologically advanced as a race, they housed an incredible secret inside of their bodies. beautiful crystals that glow with radiant energy known as memory crystals. Hey, Tarian from the edit here. While I was doing this, I realized that the actual name for the memory crystals is namestones. So sorry about that, but it's just what they're going to be called. But they are called namestones in lore, just thought you should know that. Memory crystals contain the collective memories, dreams, personalities, and all other aspects of every previous Brackern that has housed them. Each time the body of a Brackern dies, their memory crystal is buried deep below the earth for a young Brackern to dig down to and inherit the mantle of all those that have come before them. The Brackern race, from what I can understand off of the universe page and Skarner's own short story, seem to have a very strong connection with the very world itself, able to feel the changing parts of the underground and the emotions of Runeterra, which is why they very rarely interfere with the mortal races of Runeterra, as with these memory crystals, the Brackern are effectively immortal. The Brackern that would come to be known as Skarner could feel his memory crystal calling to him, and day and night he spent his time burrowing in a methodical pattern that enveloped his valley with intricate spirals. Eventually, he found what had been calling to him, a dull, cracked memory crystal that was larger than any of the other that he had seen before. The memory crystals seem to communicate through song, as that is also how the Brackern themselves communicate. It isn't a vocal thing though, as humans seem to be unable to hear it, as the song seems to be connected through the memory crystals in some way. Skarner's crystal enveloped him in a song, and when he emerged from the underground, he was fused with the crystal, being able to feel and communicate with all of his kin in a wordless meeting of countless minds. Mortals were little more than an afterthought to the Brackern, and as the mortal races began to move towards war and conquest, the Brackern burrowed deep underground to sleep until the mortal races were gone. For them, this would be but one note in the long song of their race. So together they slept and continued their song. And then the song turned to screaming. Skarner jolted awake to see explosions to the underground burrow of his people, mortals pouring in with fire and metal, hacking into the Brackern and stealing their memory crystals. The land he saw around him was quite different than what he had seen before he went to sleep. The lush landscape was now dry, barren, desert. Skarner erupted from the sands, viciously killing many of the mortals while the rest fled, but the damage was already done to the Brackern's song. Many of those who had their crystal bodies damaged died shortly after waking up, and some could not even be roused at all. His race was effectively facing an extinction event, and Skarner is the only one left with the power to do anything. He knew that the magic of the memory crystals would fade in the hands of mortals. He had to get them back. As weeks passed, he was finally able to hear a small sound, a single, terrifying note that urged him to act. He knew that if he left his home, then the rest of the Brackern would be defenseless. But what choice did he have? Skarner now travels into the desert, a lonesome search for the memory crystals of his kin. Hope and anguish fuel his determination to revive his race each time he hears the faint notes of his kin's memory crystals, knowing that the survival of the Brackern race is all that matters. Jesus Christ, that was a lot. Skarner's lore is not plentiful, but it's one of the best in League in my opinion. He is a sympathetical hero who only kills to help restore his people. His goal is clear, his power source is clear, who he is clear, and his entire lore is very clear. In fact, I think the only thing that isn't clear is the origin of the Brackern, but you can theorize that they're one of the first races that emerged on Runeterra, seeing as how connected they are with the very earth itself. He's overall a character that you can understand pretty well, and I think a lot of people can feel sympathy for him in some way. If anything, the only thing that's bad about his lore is how the only joke I can make about it relates to Seraphine, which I don't want to do because that's like beating a dead horse at this point. Anyways, I rate Skarner's lore a solid 10 out of 10. It is amazing, it sets him up as a perfect hero, and as sad as I am to see it go away with the rework, I know that what they're going to do with it is still going to be great. Also, quick edit here. Before making this video, I didn't know that the Russian Badger, a much more popular YouTuber than I am, plays League of Legends and apparently maybe plays Skarner. Just look at this clip. It's kind of cool.
I'm gonna cosplay Skarner and say,
I see the wisdom in that.
I see the wisdom in that. I miss my kind.
Skarner's passive is Crystal Spires, and it's possibly one of the weirdest abilities in League of Legends due to how it changes the whole dynamic of the map because one champion was locked in. For the entire game, there are 6 crystal spires on the map, one beside each neutral objective, and one beside each of the red and blue buffs. After minions spawn, either team can capture these spires by having at least one champion to enter the area for a short duration. Upon capture, it gives a little bit of gold that gets split up if any more than 2 champions are standing in the capture area, and it's unable to be captured by the other team for a short while. Now here's where it gets a little bit funny, because despite the fact that anyone from either team can capture them, they only actually affect Skarner and literally decide whether or not he's a champion during team fights in the jungle. If Skarner is standing in the area created by a spire that is captured by his team, he gains crystal charge. He also gets it when he crowd controls someone off of his E and R, but we'll get there when we get there. While Skarner has crystal charge, he gains an insane amount of bonus movement speed based on level, an insane amount of bonus attack speed based on level, and regenerates 2% of his maximum mana every second. And the reason it's insane is because when he doesn't have these buffs, he barely feels like a champion. Having these buffs make you feel like you're on crack, but not having them makes you feel so useless and sluggish because you lose stats that remove your entire ability to fight someone. All of the rest of Skarner's abilities rely in some part off of these stats you get from his passive, and his damage numbers on the rest of his abilities are some of the lowest in all of League of Legends. So you need these insane stats to feel like a wet noodle whacking someone instead of whacking someone with a piece of paper, but having your arms weighted down by like cinder blocks. Trust me, that was the best visual I could make for this joke. This passive sucks for another reason, and it directly correlates to Skarner's main damage source, in quotes because it barely does any damage, his Q, Crystal Slash. Skarner does a small amount of physical damage around him with a small portion of it based on the enemy's max health, and if he hits any champion, minion, or monster with his ability, it becomes empowered for the next few seconds, causing any subsequent hits to do bonus magic damage equal to the physical damage, and giving the magic damage an AP ratio in addition to its AD ratio. Whenever Skarner attacks something, the cooldown on this ability is reduced by 1/4 of a second, and anytime you attack a champion, the cooldown is reduced by a full second. Combined with its already base low cooldown, and the amount of ability haste that you typically get in a standard Skarner build, the ability comes off cooldown at the same rate as your auto attacks when you're fighting a champion. While this ability can be spammed super quickly, especially in late game, making your ring finger become the only finger you'll need, it does so little damage. It doesn't have any base damage to it. It's completely based off of Skarner's total AD and the enemy's max health, meaning it will eventually scale to be halfway decent, but for the majority of the game, it's just filler for you to do while your auto attacks do the actual work. It does a decent amount of damage to neutral objectives, making Skarner able to take Dragon Herald at a much better rate compared to some of the other junglers in the roster, as long as he has a Spire. I mean, just look at the rate at which I'm taking them at level 5 when I do and don't have a Spire. It's just night and day. In summary, this ability is a bit like calls from your mom. Miss one and you'll probably be okay. Miss them all and you're not going to be alive in about 20 seconds. Skarner's W is Crystalline Exoskeleton. Wow, that's a cool name actually. I like that. It's a great ability, it's really good, it's very complicated. You see, you press the ability, you press the W key, you go there on your keyboard and you press W, and then you get a shield, and you get ramping movement speed, and that's all it does actually. It's Skarner's main defensive and offensive ability, and his main way to get onto people to help prep his other abilities and auto-attack them as well for his Q, his E, and for his ultimate. The shield lasts for a long period of time and has a fairly short cooldown, especially once you get some ability haste, so it's not the worst to use it to traverse the map either, especially due to the mana regen off of his passive, meaning you'll never have to worry about mana issues in your own jungle, hopefully. I mean, just look at me. Look how speedy I am. I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to be like, hey, oh, that's kind of mean. And then I'm just going to take you. We're going to go over here. You're gone. And, that's a good day. It's a good day. I'm just going to get out here. Goodbye, guys. Have a good one. Have a good time. Except I lied. I'm coming back in. Actually, I didn't lie. I'm actually going back out. But then I'm going to go back in. But then I'm actually just going to go back out. But then I'm going to go in. But then I'm going to not go back in because I need to get out of here. And, yeah. Good fight, everyone. Skarner's E is Fracture. Skarner fires out a projectile that slows it and deals a little itty-bitty bit of damage to all enemies hit and marks them for a few seconds. If Skarner auto-attacks a marked target, he stuns them for a short duration and deals bonus damage with the attack. Passively, whenever Skarner stuns an enemy with this ability or uses his ultimate, the cooldown of this ability is reduced by the duration of the crowd control. Also, he gets his passives bonus for about long enough to do 2 auto attacks. The ability in and of itself is pretty lackluster, just like getting the same gift for your birthday twice in a row, and even the ability to get your passive off is just okay, like getting to celebrate your birthday with the people you love, but still having to pay for dinner. In the jungle, the ability is super nice against raptors and wolves as the passive decreases the cooldown whenever you proc the stun and gets the ability back up incredibly quickly to let you get more damage on the big monster on the cap, but outside of that, it's just okay when it comes to dealing with champions. Getting hit by it is kind of like seeing a toddler faceplant onto the ground. You don't really know if it's going to be okay or not until you hear the crying. However, you only really need to hit one champion with his ability to synergize well with his ultimate, which is the make or break part of his kit. Impale is Skarner's ultimate, and it's possibly one of the most powerful abilities in the entire game. Remember when we talked about power budgets in the Neela video? Well, this is like if someone took a small loan of $1 million, invested it every single penny of it into their ultimate, made another $20 million off of their investment and said, I'll fucking do it again, and put it all back into its ultimate. Skarner chooses one champion on the enemy team and for the next 2 seconds decides to make them his little bitch doing his best Scorpion impression, this time from Mortal Kombat, not the animal, to drag their ass wherever Skarner wants to go. Into his team, you're dragged. Into the spire, you're bagged. Skarner chooses an enemy champion, dealing damage and suppressing them for about 2 seconds. During this time, the enemy champion is tethered to Skarner, meaning anywhere that he goes, the enemy champion will follow. When the suppression ends, the enemy champion takes the same damage again, and during this time, Skarner is unable to auto-attack or cast his E. What's notable about this ability is that the target has to stay in front of Skarner. So you'll see in a few of these clips, you'll see me going behind myself really quick, and it drags the person in front of me, getting a little bit of a longer distance. The damage on this ability is abysmal, being one of the lowest base damage out of any ultimate ability in the game, but that's not the point of the ability. Suppression is the second most potent form of crowd control as it's not affected by tenacity, meaning the duration of the crowd control will always be the same, and Cleanse, the summoner spell, doesn't work on it. The only way to stop suppression is to buy QSS or have a fucking Milio on your team, I hate that champion, which is a 1300 gold tax that the enemy team has to pay in order to not have Skarner ult them and instead ult the next best target. Combine that with the fact that you get to reposition a high priority target on the enemy team and you get one of the most powerful abilities in League of Legends, and it sucks because it means that the only way for Skarner to be balanced is to have all of the rest of his abilities be just okay and have his damage numbers be one of the lowest out of almost every champion. I mean, look at this ability. I can just take whoever I want and suddenly they're exactly where I want them. Hell, I play in high diamond, low masters at the moment, and I barely see people even buy QSS. Just look at these people and laugh. Now, is Skarner good? Not really. Like I've been saying for the majority of this video, he needs his spires in order to actually feel like a champion due to the insane stats, and the only way to prevent someone from taking a spire is to stand in it yourself, which can create a whole host of new problems since it is such a small area. Skarner also suffers from his design being too focused around having his ult be this amazing ability that the rest of his kit just suffers from being bland and built to have his ult be the only part of his kit. His main damage ability doesn't do damage to anything but neutral objectives. His main defensive ability gives him movement speed to be used to get in range for his ultimate. His E slows people and stuns them, meaning he has more time to get in range of them, then stun them after he drags them to make sure they stay where he wants them. All of this would be fine if the ult wasn't so powerful that his numbers have to be so abysmal. Without the spires, you just feel like this massive ult bot, and even though that's not the worst thing, as lots of characters can turn into that if they don't get ahead, Skarner still feels like that even when he is massively ahead if he doesn't have his spire. It doesn't help that the spires only affect the jungle too, and not even the entirety of the jungle, so if your team decides to go ARAM, then you'll always just be waiting for someone to walk up slowly so you can flash ult them before anyone can react. Overall, he's a very fun character to play, even if it doesn't always feel great to play him, and it's part of the reason why I'm excited to see how they recreate him for the rework, and I hope they keep the ability for him to build either tank or bruiser, as him having some ability to deal real damage will help him out quite a lot, seeing as though he's one of the lowest damaging champions in the game currently. Either way, I'm excited to see where they'll take him, and I'm excited that you all stayed till the end of the video. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is TheTarians. I hope you enjoyed the honest truth about Skarner. If you did, go leave a comment telling me who you believe I should do an honest truth about next. And while you're down there, go subscribe to the channel to be updated when any new of my videos comes out, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.